We're looking at chapter 12 of our text, Communication Climates. We've looked firstly at what is a communication climate. Second, how do communication climates develop? And now third, creating supportive communication climates. So even the most positive message isn't guaranteed to create a positive climate. Sometimes praise can be interpreted as sarcasm, an innocent smile can be perceived as a sneer, and an offer to help can be seen as condescension. Jack Gibbs isolated 6 types of defensive arousing communication and 6 contrasting behaviors that seem to reduce defensiveness. Let's look at those. Here they are. The first category is evaluation versus description. Of course, we know what evaluation is. It's the attempt to judge another person in a negative way. Evaluative messages such as this basically say you don't care about me. They judge what the other person is feeling rather than describing the other person's thoughts, feelings, and wants. Further, they don't explain how the speaker arrived at his or her conclusion, and of course they lack specifics. So that's evaluation. Description, on the other hand, is a way to offer your thoughts, feelings, and wants without judging the listener. Descriptive messages now make observations that are documented, that are specific, that are concrete. They focus on behavior that can be changed rather than on personal characteristics. They use I language instead of you language, which of course, you language tends to increase defensiveness. I language tends to reduce defensiveness. Several characteristics of descriptive messages. First, the focus is on the speaker's thoughts, feelings, and wants, with no judgment on the person, on the individual. Second, the message addresses specific behaviors rather than trying to make a sweeping generalization. The message also provides information on how the speaker arrived at the conclusion. And then finally, maybe the most important, the descriptive statements seem to be just as honest as the evaluative counterpart. That's the first one. The second one is control versus problem orientation. Controlling communication occurs when a sender seems to be imposing a solution on the receiver with little regard for that person's needs or interests. And so the channel can range from words, gestures, tone of voice, and the control can be accomplished through status, insistence on obscure or irrelevant rules, or sometimes physical power. No matter the object or the channel or the form of control, the controller will generate hostility, and he or she is basically saying, I know what's best for you, and if you do what I say, we'll all get along. In problem orientation, communicators now focus on finding a solution that satisfies both the needs, their own needs, and those of the other person involved. Problem orientation is typified by we language rather than I language. The we language suggests that the speaker is making decisions with the other person rather than for the other person. Strategy versus spontaneity. And Gibbs uses the word strategy to characterize defensive arousing messages in which speakers hide their motives or their ulterior motives. The term dishonesty and manipulation basically characterizes this strategy. So just as we saw in chapter 7, counterfeit questions are a form of strategic communication because their intent is to trap the other person in a desired response. You've probably been at the receiving end of this when a salesperson has given you information and that make it difficult for you to say no. In contrast to strategy, spontaneity is being honest with others rather than trying to manipulate them. All right. The next, so as you look at, next one is neutrality versus empathy. Gibbs uses the term neutrality to describe a fourth behavior that arouses defensiveness. Maybe it's better to say indifference rather than neutrality. Of course, there is a difference between the two. Indifference seems to be the better word. So, a neutral or indifferent attitude is disconfirming because it communicates a lack of concern for the welfare of the other person and implies the other person is just not important to you. The behavior that contrasts with indifference or neutrality is empathy, and this is showing care for the feelings of the other person. And empathy certainly minimizes potential threats to the self-concept. By simply letting someone else know that you care and you respect them, you'll be acting in a very supportive fashion. Superiority versus equality is one more category by Gibb. The fifth one, superiority sends patronizing messages either explicitly or implicitly. This message suggests I'm better than you, and of course a message like that is likely to arouse feelings of defensiveness from you. We often communicate with people who possess less talent or knowledge than we do, but it's never right to convey an attitude of superiority in these situations. So there appears to be evidence that many who have superior skills and talents are capable of projecting feelings of equality rather than superiority. Such people communicate that although they may have greater talent in certain areas, they see other people, they perceive other beings, individuals, as having just as much worth. So equality certainly is put to the test when a person doesn't have superior skills, yet is in a position of authority. So you've been in a situation probably where you knew more about the subject than the person in charge. How did that person feel? Defensive? Probably. You both were challenging each other's presenting self, so the climate can quickly become hostile. A truly secure person can treat others with equality, even when there are obvious differences in knowledge, talent, and status. Certainty versus provincialism. Have you run into individuals who are positive they are right, who know that theirs is the only and right way to do something, who insist always that they have the facts and they need no additional information? These individuals are dogmatic about their opinions, and at the same time, they disregard the ideas of others, and that shows a lack of concern. It's likely the receiver will take the certainty as a personal affront and react defensively. In contrast to certainty is provisionalism. I don't think I said it right earlier. Provisionalism, in which people express openness to others' ideas and opinions. Provisionalism often surfaces in word choice. People acting with certainty use the terms can't, never, always, must, and have to, whereas those who use provisionalism use the terms perhaps, maybe, possibly, might, could. So research found that when teachers use provisional language, it also helps to motivate students. So, as you look at Gibbs's categories, you'll find out that the tone that underlies all of the supportive examples is respect. And certainly by valuing and confirming others, even when you disagree with them, you create a respectful climate that enhances a positive communication climate that will not increase or arouse defensiveness. All right, the next section, the last section of the chapter, is invitational communication.